And welcome to our midweek Talk Politics Roundtable. It's just a one-on-one today. It's not quite a round table. It's a line almost.
There's a lot of size here, though. About the same.
John Brummett with the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette and Talk Business and Politics contributor joins me. Thank you for being here.
My great pleasure.
The format is I ask a question, you answer, and I might answer, and you ask a question, and I answer, and you might answer, but I'm going to let you have the first question. How about that?
Really?
Yeah.
Well, excellent. Here's the first question. The public school situation in Little Rock, I think it's very, very important. And there are two competing forces that are very, seem polarized. You've got the people who want to improve the Little Rock public schools using traditional public education methods, and then you've got Walton-type reformers who want to do charter schools or semi-privatized schools with Teach for America kids. It seems to come down to Asa Hutchinson. He's appointed his director now, Johnny Key, and he's going to appoint 2 education board members. So what do you think he's going to do? What do you think he's going to do, or what do you think he should do? Whichever way you would prefer to answer.
Well, I think that they have to do something radical, and I think that they should be allowed to do something experimental, because what has been in place is not working. And you got to try to shake things up. Now, I don't think that you have to experiment on a grand scale. I don't think you have to do it district-wide with everything that you want to do. But I think if you want to put some of these Walton-type reforms, Teach for America, come in and try it as a pilot project and see if it works.
You know, I think that's pretty much my position. I thought you might take another one and then I would get to argue. But I think actually in Arkansas or in Little Rock, the conservative point of view seems to be the conservative, the reforms, and the liberal establishment rallies around traditional public education. But nationally, and the New York Times just today had a piece about pressure on Hillary Clinton between these two forces and how she's torn, and how President Obama and his education secretary are in favor of many of these reforms. And the problem is we can't get them together. These 6 failing schools, what if they did a little of both? What if in those 6 schools they were sort of half charter, half faculty, it was Teach for America, some KIPP school methods along with some traditional public education methods? Why not try a combination and see if they can coexist? It might be a wonderful opportunity and a good laboratory for those things to take place.
You picked up on a word I was going to use, a laboratory of experimentation. Like
now, some people will say, well, you're not supposed to be experimenting with our children. We do what, but yeah, I think this is an opportunity. What they are doing in those 6 schools, not working.
All right. Let's.
Now you get to ask me something?
I am going to ask you now. So Attorney General Leslie Rutledge says that there are 8 inmates who have exhausted their appeals. They are ready for state execution if the drugs can be found. This is in lieu of the Supreme Court ruling on lethal injections. So here's my question to you is, will Governor Asa Hutchinson in his 4 years, in his presumably first term as governor, will he carry out an execution as governor in this next 4 years?
Well, you know, it's beginning to look like we're going to have a monument on our state capitol grounds for with the 10 Commandments. So I don't quite see how we could. I don't know how we could carry out the death penalty if we have a monument to thou shalt not kill. I think Jason Rapert is pretty well ruining any prospect for lethal injection.
You were going to find a way to work Rapert into our conversation.
Well, if we're going to put the monument on the Capitol grounds that says thou shalt not kill, how are we then going to kill as a state? Would you like me to be, I'm serious about that, but you'd like me to answer it?
I would prefer it, because they did stone in the Old Testament people to death as well. So,
Arkansas is a death penalty state. We're sort of primitive that way. We want to do it. We've had 13 more executions since the 13th in the nation in the number of executions since it was reinstated in the 70s. That's out of proportion to where we rank in terms of population. Asa Hutchinson needs to be conservative. I think if he can, he will, of course. But the question is big. One, the retail pharmacies and now the Compounders Association are both about to go on record saying we're not going to give you any drugs. So if you can't get the drugs, and then there still is an Oklahoma appeal where they had a terribly botched lethal injection over there before the Supreme Court. And now that there are new methods, even though the state Supreme Court has approved a new method in Arkansas, it's potentially a whole new avenue for injunctive relief, post-conviction relief for these 8 inmates and others. And say, wait, now you're changing the rules about how I'm going to be killed. So I think it's a very big question as to whether you can get the drugs and whether there will be a gap in the injunctions that may in the next 4 years. Probably, but I'm not sure.
I'm going to go on record as saying I don't think he'll perform a state execution in the next 4 years. I think that
Because
the
of
legal
the
system will
reasons
gum
I've
it
said?
up, and I think that the availability of drugs will be
Would you go so
a
far as
complicating factor.
to presume his reelection in 8 years, maybe?
If he is reelected for a second term, I think that he will oversee a
But
state
you think it's
execution.
because of the litigation more than the availability of the drugs?
Yeah, because I think that they will actually pursue some other methods of execution.
You know, Utah has reinstated firing squad.
Oklahoma has the firing squad too that people do not know about. Did you know that?
I think I knew it, but Utah is actually going to do it, right? I think, or has done it
Well, there's still
in the modern time.
Yeah, there's still the electric chair, and there's still the gas chamber on some
Oh, there are
states'
ways.
books.
There are ways, yeah.
All right, your turn to ask the next question. Do you remember what your next question
I
is?
do.
All right.
I do. This is a more thoughtful question. Blending politics and business. Do you like to blend politics and
Well,
business?
we do call ourselves Talk Business and Politics.
I want you to give a little bit of interpretation, not so much opinion because you're an objective journalist, but taking this legislative session as a whole, what's been done in the vast array of fields. Has the cause of economic development, have our economic prospects, economic development policies, have they been enhanced generally by what's happened out there? Have they been set back generally, or is it kind of a wash?
I think it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I'll run through the things that I think have advanced the cause or been neutral enough to keep us going in the right direction. Workforce education changes. I think those are positive. There are going to be some things to help get people in existing jobs with the right skill set. They really didn't lay out any new economic incentives, but they did renew the Quick Action Closing Fund, which has proven, in Mike Beebe's term, to be very beneficial. I think that's a positive. I think where there has been a negative has been in this debate over lesbian and gay issues, and I think that that is definitely going to be a step backwards in the perception of the state in attracting some more progressive companies to come here. But I would say Oklahoma, Mississippi, Alabama, these are states that aggressively pursue economic development projects. They have some of that same political slant in their states too on those same issues. And I don't know if it's necessarily hurt those states for recruiting. I don't know if it's the #1 thing that would keep a company from coming here.
Well, I think Alabama can be a backward state in some of its policies, but an auto plant will still want to go there for other reasons, for example. Mississippi, the same thing. I would submit generally, and it will surprise you that I would take this position, that not staying with the times in terms of cultural change in the country is generally a step back for the state. Mm-hmm. That new economy comes from new thinking, and then new thinking creates more new jobs. And if you're not on that cycle, you get more behind. That's not to say that great trucking companies can't spring up here or that Walmart can't spring up here, but I would remind you, Walmart put out a statement against this legislation, showing where the general business community, even among conservatives tends to be. I also believe we've taken a step back on our school reforms, which are important to economic development.
Even with computer coding in there, which is getting a lot of national press this week.
Were you around?
Is going to be a very...
I know, there's a magazine piece. Yes. Were you around when we had that horrible fight with so much at stake about consolidating high schools so that
This is 1957. I wasn't born then.
No, you were here. You were here. You were around, weren't you? In the Huckabee days?
Yes.
You know how hard it was to get, and we finally got everybody to settle on the idea that the best quality instruction in some of the technical fields, the laboratories of science and math, you have to have economies of scale to get your best instructors into reasonable numbers of students. We've retreated on that, basically, in this session.
But technology has changed that now, too.
If we're going to use it. If we're going to use it. I mean, technology has changed so much that everybody can go to virtual school, sitting at home, which we may be headed someday. But I think on those 2 points, this has been generally a backward step for the state's economic development.
All right, last question, my question here. The state legislature's passed a capital gains tax cut, a middle class tax cut, but they defeated a low income tax cut. What's the most logical reason for why they would not pass a tax break, tax relief for lower income Arkansans?
Meanness.
Meanness?
No, I take it back. That's the easiest explanation, but there's more nuance to it than that.
Okay.
Let me try to explain. But it's mistaken. There is the conservative school of thought that poor people simply get too much, and for getting what they get in terms of assistance, they ought to have some, horrible cliche, skin in the game. They ought to pay something. And I think when Representative Sabin came with his bill to give people who work, working people,
below $20,000,
below $20,000, an earned income tax credit, that, and it could be refundable to the point that they could actually get cash back beyond what their tax bill was, that unnerved many of these conservatives who were saying essentially, one, we're already, rest of us are paying their Medicare, we're giving them Obamacare subsidies, which we'd sure like to take away, and they need to pay some taxes too. And this idea that they would pay no taxes is just not right. The problem, quickly I'll tell you why they're wrong. A poor person in Arkansas, by the time he pays a sales tax to buy his clothes to go do his meager paying job, and by the time he pays, which is a regressive tax, and then fills up his car with gasoline on a per gallon tax, which is a regressive tax because it takes a greater share of the lower income. As long as we have those two things, the working man poor working man in Arkansas is going to be paying more than a fair percentage of his income in taxation.
I would argue the main reason why they didn't get that income tax break, not meanness, I would say number one, it was not a governor's priority. He did have a priority for those making $21,000 and above, up to $75,000. And there is no representation of the poor at the state capitol, very little in terms of compared to other special interest groups. It is hard to get your way at the state capitol if you don't have somebody up there advocating for you. The argument of fairness does not always
But don't you agree with me that the general political temperament of our Republican Revolution is not to give additional tax relief to working poor? That's not a
Well,
priority.
I agree with your statement that there is a perception, whether it's real or not. I'm not sure in totality that there are too many people getting too much benefits from the government. So I agree with you on that.
Okay.
All right. This has been fun.
Let's do it again.
Enlightening. Thank you so much.
I thought so.
John Brummett with the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Thanks. You can keep up with all of the latest political headlines at talkbusiness.net as well as katv.com. I'm Roby Brock. Thanks for watching.